Hello, everybody, and welcome again to another episode of the Risk Matrix with myself, Dr. Martin, and Mr. James Junkin. Hello, James.
Hey, good morning. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
College softball's back. Basketball season's over for Bama, but man, women's softball. If you, for all of our listeners, if you love sports, if you have not checked out women's college softball, you're missing out. Those ladies are tremendous athletes.
They
I
can play.
greatly enjoy watching it.
They can play, for sure.
Absolutely.
Alabama and Oklahoma.
Absolutely.
I got to mention
Oklahoma,
Oklahoma because we do have Mr. Emberling that watches us, Mr. Richard, and I know that's
he
his
does.
favorite team.
It's
So
his
I
favorite
root for
team.
both.
They're
So
outstanding. How can
what are we
you
going to
not?
talk about today, James? You got a rip for the headlines for us?
Yeah, we do. OSHA's been extremely active here of late. Um, Coming out of the headlines, Wisconsin manufacturer faces 276,000 OSHA penalties, fines, if you will, following an explosion. So, Prescott, Wisconsin beauty and looks like they provide personal care products. They're a manufacturer. They've been assessed $275,695 in penalties from OSHA after a 55-gallon fiber drum containing nitrocellulose exploded and started a secondary fire involving flammable liquids. Now, from the news article, it doesn't appear anybody was hurt, thank goodness. But when they went in and they looked at this company and did the inspection, OSHA found that the employer didn't have a thorough new hire safety orientation. Does this sound familiar? Didn't have an, onboarding induction training, right?
Yep.
Failed to provide newly hired employees with chemical and respiratory protection training, HAZCOM, respirator fit testing, and medical evaluations.
This
And
is
all of
basic
these
stuff, James. Basic
just
stuff.
stuff. I mean, it's the same things that you find on the OSHA top 10 most frequently cited OSHA standards every year. They got popped with 10 serious violations related to flammable liquids, fire extinguisher training and inspections, forklift training and inspections, electrical hazards that are probably, I would say, that's either temporary wiring being used in replace of permanent wiring, or training or guarding of some cases, hazard communication, and then just a ton of citations. I think they had 6 other than serious for record keeping. So this is basic stuff that
Yeah.
people
This
ought
is
to
this
have.
is not stuff OSHA needs to come in and go looking for, right? This is actually just, like a 30,000-foot view. Anybody can spot it. And I got to be honest with you, James, in my site walks over the last few months, these are the things that I see. Even in previous careers, these are the things that I see. People just storing chemicals wherever, storing flammables in the sun, right? In expandable containers, in enclosed expandable containers. I've seen. Uh, I mean, I don't know if it's people just don't care, uh, or they have underqualified people helping them be compliant, or I mean, maybe it is. Maybe it's just what is OSHA?
Might be, but here's why this raises my eyebrows. If this was the first time that this company had been in trouble with OSHA, you might could say, well, maybe
We
they
don't.
didn't know.
We didn't know.
But two of the citations are repeats. And when you get into repeat citations with OSHA, you see exponentially the penalties go up. I think for a willful, for a repeat, we start around $133,000 is maybe that's the maximum penalty that you can get. Not up to date on the 2026. I don't think it's been adjusted for inflation yet. But regardless, they've already been cited for repeat violations for respiratory protection in the HAZCOM. So my takeaway from this is, if you're a safety professional and you're coming into an organization and you're taking over the safety program, go back to the OSHA establishment search page and look at that organization and see what their record history is as far as inspections are concerned. Things may have happened years before you got there, and then you find out, you're facing repeat.
I
And
I think it's
somebody
interesting. Some of these country companies conveniently forget that they went through something earlier, or maybe management changed and, things have happened, or they don't think that it matters. This is a new case, no big deal. But OSHA keeps score.
OSHA keeps score. And the other thing that I find interesting with these repeat violations, when you come to the end at the informal conference, or if you settle a contest, you decide to contest the citation, at some point you have to certify that you've abated these hazards. So for them to have settled this case at some point, to either at the informal, which is most likely, or they settled it during the contest period, they still had to abate those hazards. Somebody said that they had abated and corrected whatever the violations were to respiratory protection and hazard communication. And it's obvious that didn't happen. So I'm just warning companies, once you have an inspection, once you tell OSHA you're going to do something and then you fail to do it, they may not run out and check. When you certify that you have evaded these whatever the citation and violation is, you're certifying that you corrected that and you put controls in place. That either happens at the informal or shortly thereafter, or they give you time to abate. You may say, I need 3 months to get this done, but somebody within the company, an official, an officer of the company is certifying that they've abated it. What happened to the abatement in this case?
Mhm.
So, word for the wise, if you're out there, OSHA, despite all the things that have happened in this past year and in the previous year with funding and staffing, they are not playing. This is just one example of many other companies that are getting hit with penalties that are hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I always say this: I know resources are limited. I get that. You're a business owner, Doc. I'm a business owner. We don't have this massive amount of cash over here.
You don't? You don't?
I don't. I
I don't
don't. I
either.
wish I did. I love this little island I really like to go to. But look, how many people could we train for $276,000?
A lot. A lot.
How many safety data sheets could we get for $276,000?
A
But
lot.
luckily, nobody got killed. But anyway, that's our rip from the headlines.
All right. Well, let me move you towards this. It doesn't get much better, James. This is going to run during the week of Workers Memorial Week, Workers Memorial Day, which I think is April 28th, maybe.
I think
Um,
that's right.
I think that's the end of the week. And the Workers Memorial basically honors or actually remembers the people killed in the workplace, of which, what is it? What is the number around now, James? 5,500 or so we lose every
Yeah.
year to fatalities. This is something that's near and dear to both of our hearts, because we both work on fatalities, do more than I do. Um, we see this happen. We see how it affects the other workers. We see how it affects companies, livelihoods, etc. So, take some time this week to remember workers killed in the workplace. And I guess the takeaway, and this is the lead into what we're going to talk about today, is we need to do better. We need to do better. As you talked about with the Wisconsin uh, penalties, there, a couple $100,000 for stuff that could have been um, corrected after the last OSHA visit, or certainly could have been corrected as low hanging fruit to somebody in our role. We need to do better. And so, I guess this leads me to an article you said you liked, and I had to look back because I'm one of those that push a lot of stuff out onto the internet and then I forget about it. But do you want to lead it in with
Sure. absolutely. If you have not subscribed to Dr. Martin's newsletter, Safety Insights on LinkedIn, you should do that. You should do that. And sometimes we post it over on the Risk Matrix podcast page there on LinkedIn, but she's done a great job of getting information out that's not only very well written, but strikes at the core of safety management. And this article came out, I believe it was March the 14th, and it's titled "The Great Safety Hypocrisy." Great
Okay.
Safety Hypocrisy, and it got a
Yeah.
lot of views, a lot of comments. People engaged with that article, and it really made me stop and pause just a little bit to think about what we spend our day discussing. And, there's this great debate between behavior-based safety and HOP, and we've been through that on this podcast numerous times. We got conference season coming up. We'll
You know,
hear that a bunch along with all the other controversies that are out there. And I'm like, man, when are we going to talk about the stuff that's actually killing people? When are we going to get serious? It's hard for me to talk to a company about uh, Hop, and I love Hop. I like a lot of things about Hop. I like a lot of things about behavior-based safety, but we can't even get to that point if we can't, like this Wisconsin company, get the basics of training down. The basics, right?
right.
So that's takeaways that we came out of this. There's there's some opportunities for all of us to be hypocritical. And I want to get your thoughts on this. The very first sentence of your article is this: the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
Okay.
Talk about context to worker fatalities.
So, with the article, I think what I was trying to do was say, we talk a lot. We're talking heads for the most part. A lot of us, like to talk about safety theories. You said there's things that we like about this, things that we like about that. We go to conferences, everybody's talking about it, and we spend a lot of time looking at what we're doing and saying it's wrong, but then we continue to do it. And that's this TRIR metric, right? We're still measuring our subcontractors on that. Owners are still measuring us on that, GCs on that, et cetera. And, I think it's time to get off the pedestal talking about how wrong it is what we're doing and start putting in place something that's right. Okay. And this goes right to research to practice, right? I mean, research is not talking about what you think is better about something. It's actually implementing it in companies and with your clients and seeing what works and what doesn't. And that's the kind of articles I want to read is how are people putting these things into play to replace TRIR? Okay. So, I mean, I go down and I list several things, right? I talk about leading and lagging indicators. I talk about PSIF and SIF, right? Which is a big talking point now for a lot of people. National Safety Council has something out on it. We've got a new standard, guidance standard, talking about SIF and PSIF. But again, where does the rubber meet the road? That's my question is, I get where we're going with this, but the time to implement is now.
I would say one of the one of my biggest takeaways from your article in discussing TRIR was it tells us about the failures of the past, not the risk of the future. And that is so powerful. TRIR, not taken in context of an evaluation of a company's total safety management system, very discriminatory to small companies from a metric standpoint. It
Yeah.
also equalizes severity. I had a student send in some work I was looking at and grading this morning, and we were talking a little bit about this issue here as far as it relates to rewards. Whether what people think about setting up bonus program or an award program keyed to injury statistics. And he comes from the field and he said, maybe we could set something up that said Zero might not be attainable, but let's get something more realistic, like two or three. Okay. Well, let's take that in context. That may be reasonable if two or three are minor injuries that result in no serious damage to the person. We don't have serious. Well, what my reply to him was, what if one of those injuries was a worker burned over 85% of his body? So it's really, you got to take things in context. And I know there's been this great debate in defining what serious means. And there are multiple definitions out there. And a lot of organizations have tried to come up with a definition of serious. National Safety Council has some great work out right now about trying to categorize these injuries, but moving away from these lagging indicators into something that looks at leading indicators and quantifies it.
Mhm.
So I think that's great because look, we all say this, we all say TRIR is a lagging indicator. You got to look at it in context. It equalizes severity. It can be manipulated through managed care. It has exactly zero predictive value for the future. CSRA and Matthew Hollowell's group wrote an outstanding article based on their research that said it's only predictable 50% of the time if you have 10 years of worth of data. So it's a coin toss.
Mhm. And who
You
has
have
10
any
years worth of data? Listen, what one of the biggest things, that you mentioned from what I wrote, is the ability to manipulate our metrics, right? And I don't care what metric you TRIR, leading indicators, whatever the metric is, right? If we're going to focus on the word metric and the quantifying things, right? Whatever the metric is, if you tell me what it is, most people are human, right? You tell people what they're going to be measured on, what are they going to do, right? Um, People's jobs depend on it. People's success depend on it. Getting work from other vendors depends on it. It becomes a false metric in that people will start to either focus on that specific thing to the detriment of others, or they will manipulate it so that they always look good, right? And so, I mean, one of my big takeaways in looking at this whole kind of suite of things that we try to, we're struggling with in the safety community, is that it's not so much we need a metric. I think what we need is a way to institute learning in an organization such that whatever we use, we have an improvement of lesser injuries, right? Lesser severity, etc. And maybe it's not such a good idea to use a metric at all to compare apples to oranges, because I think a lot of times that's what happens, right? When are we using TRIR? I mean, the BLS maybe, looks at it, or, maybe
I
we
mean
look at it when we're qualifying subcontractors, but what does it mean? And if it means nothing, then why are we even reporting this out?
I mean, I think that's really the issue. That's the major issue is trying to determine the effectiveness of somebody's safety management system numerically with an easy button. I had a client back in 2017. Uh, it was my first real big fatality, multiple fatalities, um, forward to the hospital. It was awful. It was awful. But it happened to a company that had a world class safety program. Bad things can happen to good companies.
Mhm.
And it happened on a location where the host employer was dedicated to safety. I mean, they run nuclear power plants. How safe do you have to be to operate a nuclear power plant? You don't get to say we're operating at 98.2%. Sorry about Phoenix. You'll come back in 1,000 years, right? But the effect of that incident, which was a series of failures, just like in all major catastrophic incidents, is truly a great example of the Swiss cheese model. And ultimately, somebody didn't follow a management of change procedure, thinking they were doing the right thing. And it led to 2 dead and 4 in the hospital. What was the ending result for the contract? Because most of their hiring clients had awarded work based on total recordable injury rate, which was fantastic throughout all these years, except for 2017, they lost $350 million worth of business the following year and for the next 3 years because of what it did to them mathematically. Now, this incident was never going to happen again. They put the right controls in place, but when you look at that from a numerical standpoint, they just wiped $1 billion worth of revenue off the books. So I think there has to be a better way to evaluate companies. I know the team at Bearforce is working on different ways to look at leading indicators from a weighted standpoint. Because, like you've listed in your article, what the new leading indicators are. You know, people told me number of completed safety trainings, number of near miss field reports, frequency of behavioral based safety operations, number of safety audits completed. You know, all these things that are leading indicators. But what we've not done a good job is come to a consensus as to what that means.
Uh,
You know, if I do 10 safety meetings instead of 12, what does that mean?
Honestly, you know what I'm gonna say, right? It just depends because it depends on your makeup of your employee base. It depends on what tools you're using because not everybody's using the same tools or the same information. So I'm not a big fan of weighting different things because I can give something a certain weight and you can give it another weight, right? And
Right.
even if some overseeing agency comes and they say this is the weight, I still would probably beg to disagree, right? I worked for consulting with a software company that was trying to do something similar to this, right? But they did it on a company based system, right? So the company could weight the way that they wanted to look at things, like maybe the safety meetings are 10% or maybe we think we're better at this and so we weighted a little higher. And basically that became a moving target for a company, not so much a weighted thing for everyone, right? Or for an industry.
Well, what came out of your article, which kind of goes along with what you're talking about, is this: what's wrong with the leading indicator approach? You said it suffers from two critical fatal flaws that make them unsuitable as a primary outcome metric for a broader organization because you're measuring compliance versus measuring effectiveness. You know, if I do 12 safety meetings a month or 12 safety meetings a year, if I do the training, that's great. I've got my documentation, I've got compliance, I can prove it to an OSHA inspector that it's happening. But was it effective? If you have 100% of employees that have completed lockout tagout training, that's great. But if it was not, they were not trained effectively, if they cannot perform their task in accordance with the procedure that you have developed for that machine that's in compliance with OSHA's lockout tagout standard, then what was it? So again, we're measuring compliance versus measuring effectiveness. What was the quality of it? It's moving from a check the box mentality to operational effectiveness. And I thought you it was very powerful because you said measuring compliance creates a dangerous illusion of safety. And I
Hmm.
wonder how many people that have suffered fatalities as we move into Worker Memorial Week had an illusion of safety.
Hmm.
And these defenses all failed, and then somebody didn't get to come home.
So if you scroll down a little bit on the article, I talk about operational efficiency, right? And one of the things, and this kind of speaks to what you were just mentioning, um, you know, it's not compliance so much as it is implementing and measuring and keeping track of are the critical controls working that make sure that we have a safe environment for our workers, right? That's one of the things, right? And then the other is looking at what will be the outcome in relation to these controls, right? Are we putting the
Right.
controls in the right place to manage SIF and potential SIF, injuries? And I think that sings to me, right? Because we're not really looking at a metric, we're looking at the system. We're looking at what in the system can cause the most damage here and working our way through those critical components down, once we get those taken care of, we can work down to something a little bit more uh, moderate or mild, right? But we're catching the big things first and ensuring that our operations, our system is sound.
I think when I first got into safety, behavior-based safety observation cards were a big thing in the oil and gas industry, and they're still a big thing. But you're starting to see people kind of move away from that to something else. Sometimes it's observations that are more formal inspections, but I like to think of BBS cards as informal assessments, right? It's
Mhm.
me looking after you, you're looking after me. Well, the first problem you ran into when you dug down deep into how this was being implemented is we went out and we said, all right, guys, we need you to fill out these cards. If we see Dr. Martin doing something wrong, you need to stop Dr. Martin, correct her, document it on this card, and turn it in. And we're going to tally it up at the end of the week. Well, once we got to the end of the week, if we had 100 employees, how many cards do you think we had? Like three. And so everybody gets upset. We're not having participation in our safety management program. I have to report this to my hiring client sometimes. Some of the oil and gas operators and oil companies wanted you to do this and start collecting this data as a leading indicator. So the idea was to come out and to create quotas. And we said, we want 3 cards from you each week. And we'd come out and say, all right, if we don't get 3 cards from you this week, then, you're going to get written up or,
You're not going to get your
we're going
bonus.
to pay, you may not get your bonus. But if you do give us 3 cards a week, then we'll put you in a drawing for a Yeti cooler or a cool jacket or something, carrot and stick.
Yeah,
So now at the end of the week, we've got 100 employees. Now we have 300 cards, but we got what we asked for. We asked for cards, but what was the quality of the cards? I've
you
literally
got
sat there and seen
quantity.
filled out all at the same time, and they all say the same thing. So the data's not any good. It goes to your point that the metrics can be manipulated, and we're all happy. We got 100% participation in our safety management system. No, you don't. No, you don't. And you may have
Participation
hidden
doesn't
habits like a snake.
yeah, participation doesn't equal culture, right? The organizational culture. It it only gives you, you know, that it happened. It's not why did it happen, right? Culture is why it happened. And a lot of times we miss that piece and we think we're helping by encouraging people to notice more things or mention more things or whatever. And it happens just like you said, right? We're either all noticing the same things or we're picking on little things that aren't the things that are going to kill us, right? They aren't the things that are going to really make a difference when things shake out during a serious injury or a fatality.
So people are moving, and you address this in your article, away from let's focus on away from knick-knack injuries. They're recordables, but no one's going to die, right? Um, to focusing on SIF, the sticky, the stuff that will kill you, stuff that will kill you. And out of that, we obviously know what a fatality is. There's no hiding that. Um, and we may know what a serious is if you can adopt some of the definitions. OSHA has a definition, Cal OSHA has a definition. There are some definitions to serious. But then we get into potential. And that's where we say we're going to start tracking potential SIFs. We're going to track PSIFs. So everything, if you're not careful, we're not making this metric any smaller. Everything can have potential. If I slip on the ice and fall down and I get a bruise, could I have died? I could create a situation where just about an argument, just about every workplace injury or every near miss situation could potentially ended up in a serious injury. So it's like you used to tell me, you can't boil the ocean, right? You can't boil the ocean. So are we making matters worse by saying we're going to just track CIF and PCIF? Are we replacing one lagging indicator like TRR with another lagging indicator like PCIF that's really not going to offer a tremendous amount of value?
So again, I mean, I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. I'm not such a fan of the metric based approach. I know that we use it because it helps us qualify subcontractors. It helps us compare companies to each other, which I'm not sure is really a valid approach because every company is different. I'd like to see us evaluate on the effectiveness of somebody's safety management system, right? When we talk about SIF, right, I agree with you, we could probably define that. But when it comes to PSIF, it depends on what that company's doing. What industry would they work in? I know Hollowell has the based, energy wheel, energy based safety, etc. I see that could have some merit. But again, you have to have a good safety management system and measurement and evaluation of all the things that can hurt you, right? In order to
Right.
come to something for your company. Um, I'll probably get a lot of crap for it, but again, I'm not a fan of metrics. I'm not a fan of comparing apples to oranges, which is what we do. We do it every day. And I want to compare the apple to itself. And I think
Well, I think
one of
you
the
have to take everything in context,
right,
right?
everything in context. And I think, what we probably could do is build a better safety professional or build a better way
Ain't that
for what?
ain't that the truth? And that ain't that the truth? Because going back to our rip from the headlines, if you will, me and you are talking about high level safety management system approaches to quantifying the effectiveness of our programs and what metrics do you use. If you're a safety professional and you're struggling getting basic training down, basic hazard identification down, that's where you need to focus. You need to focus on getting your safety management system in place. What are our policies? What are the hazards that are in our workplace that I need to develop policies for? What's the training that's required that I need to do because it's regulatory required? This is sort of like that's like math 101. This is sort of like math 301. We got to get the basics down before we can get to this. But I see a lot of safety professionals, and I mean newly minted safety professionals, spending a lot of time talking about these issues when they need to be spending time getting the basics of hazard identification and controls in place.
Well, they need to get to know their companies too, right? I mean, and I'm not gonna limit it. I'm gonna be a little bit broader because, I don't shy away from the limelight that the safety profession likes to throw on me. But, it's a lot of our safety professionals, right? It's old, young, degreed, not degreed, uh credentialed, non-credentialed, it doesn't matter, right? We don't focus on the right things. We like to yap our traps a lot about theory and I'm doing a good job because nothing's happened and I'm a good safety man, I'm a good safety professional, I'm a CSP, right? I don't want to hear any of that. What I want to know is what are you doing for your company? What are you doing for your safety management system? Can I have a conversation with you that's intelligent and talks about exactly what's happening in your neck of the woods, right? Not what's happening TIR versus leading indicators versus operational efficiency versus resilience
Right.
engineering. I I don't want to have that conversation with you. I'd rather sit down on the sofa and talk about the things that matter to your company and what you are doing about it, right? So I look back to the old days when we used to do safety pre-qualification paper, right? Remember that those days when we used to fill out all this paper and what was supposed to happen was
Not
somebody
one
but what was supposed to happen, and I think this got lost, was that you or I were to receive these packets, look through them, evaluate them, right? And then have a discussion with our subcontractors, have a discussion with the other safety director, and have maybe a site visit to view what are they doing to create a safe system within their workplace, their job sites, etc. And that got lost when we went to online safety pre-qualification, right? Now we're looking at all those things, which is great. We're using AI, my jury's out on the AI thing, but we're using all these things to look at the things that we used to manually do, but we're not doing what we should still be
I don't
doing.
know how well we did it when we were doing it on paper either, to be
Well,
honest with you.
no, but
You know,
but I'm fine with doing all that other stuff, reviewing policies and procedures and that, but there has to be a component of face to face, boots on the ground, knowledge sharing between professionals or between companies as to are they really doing what they say they're doing? And this goes right into your realm, right? Which is the deep dive audits, right? And I think
right.
without that, you can't have a safe supply chain. Without that, you can't have any sort of ability to compare apples to apples or apples to oranges. You still need that component, and that's what we're missing.
Especially if you have contractors or if you're a contractor with a subcontractor that's performing a high risk activity. Now, I'll say this: online contractor risk management systems have sped up the process. Filling this paper out, I didn't have to do a paper qual last week. Man, it took me hours to fill this out for a client. I bet I had 10 hours in it because it's not just about safety, it's about their financial situation, ESG considerations, and tons of questions you need to answer, and that's great. Online, like Veriforce, third party verification systems have sped up that process, right? To make it where it's more doable. It doesn't take so many resources to do that. But again, those answers to the questionnaire, those metrics have to be viewed in context. Paper safety is not real safety. It's a component of pre-qualifications, component of contractor management, but that's not where it should end, right? If it does, then you end up in a situation like this company I'm talking about in 2017, who is in another system, who is a really good company, an award-winning company. I know their safety director personally, their global safety director personally. This was a horrible, horrible event, but they're not this Wisconsin-based company facing $270,000 of. They had the training, they had the processes. This was a mistake that anyone could have made, and that ended up costing them, you know, $350 million a year worth of business, and they got categorized as if they don't care, when
Mhm.
I know they do care. And if I'm a hiring client, if I'm someone selecting them as a contractor, I want to view this incident in the context in which it occurred, because getting rid of them and replacing them with someone else that hasn't reported that, but didn't have the training, doesn't have the safety management system in place, is not properly identifying hazards, is not properly investigating and putting corrective actions in place like this company was. Are you really reducing risk within your supply chain? Probably not. So I think it has a place. Total recordable injury rate as now still has a place that we can coalesce around some of these other things, but it all needs to be viewed in context, and nothing is a better context than going and seeing, do you do what you say you do?
That's right. And I mean, if we're gonna weight some of this, I'm gonna say, look, I love the fact that all that paper safety can be looked at by a system, right? By a verification system. I love that. But to me, that's a way lower weight than what you just said. Do you do what you say you do, right? So in some, for me, right, this article um basically is saying, and I'm going to sum it up in my words, and then you can tell me if this is what you got from it. Maybe it's not, but blah 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 conference ideas, blah blah blah, let's replace a metric, blah blah blah, here's some other metrics. And you know what? Zip it. Zip it. Show me. Show me what you're doing. Maybe we can do away with metrics altogether if we can all get on the same page. And the only way to do that is to build a better safety professional, right? Or to tinker with the ones that are already there and get them to actually think, as opposed to relying on something that can be manipulated, that is false, that doesn't compare what it says it compares to, right? And I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of crap from that, but that's kind of where I'm going. Stop talking, start doing, and show me.
Green is good, but it's not absolute. An A is good, but it's not absolute, right? It's moving beyond that to really seeing, is this safety management system I see on paper actually functioning? Is it real? And then prioritizing that on your risk register. Risk for hiring clients that hire contractors and for general contractors that hire sub, it's defined by industry, it's defined by their management team. There's certain risks that people take. I always like to use the one related to power lines. OSHA says that I can be within 10 feet of an energized power line that's 50,000 volts. James Junkin ain't going to be within 10 feet of an energized power line that's 50,000 volts because it's magic. And I don't know how it works, right? So my rule for companies that we work with, we take it out of subpart CC and say 20 feet back. I don't want anybody, especially material handling equipment, within 20 feet of this energized power line. So that's my risk. I don't have a great risk tolerance for that. And you can have a system in place that begins with recognizing, yeah, this is what we need to talk about from pre-qualification, but let's go see what people do. And we can adjust this based on the risk tolerance for our organization.
Is
If
is it a
I'm
lot
hiring,
more work? Is it a lot more work? Yes.
absolutely it is.
Does
It's
it
100%,
protect us better? Does it protect our companies and our hiring clients and stuff better? Yes, it does. So
100%.
with
And look, we've been having these debates for as long as I've been in safety. For the last 15 years, nothing statistically has changed in the fatality rate in this country. It goes up a little bit, it goes down a little bit. We still kill between 5,000 and 6,000 workers a year. At the same time, we're approaching Worker Memorial Day. At that same time, today is the day that we remember that we're filming this is the day, Sunday, March the 29th is the day that we remember our Vietnam veterans and we welcome home and give them the welcome home they deserved that they didn't get. We built a wall in DC with the names of 58,000 American sons and daughters that went to war and died in a conflict that nearly tore this country asunder. We didn't want to forget. And yet, Workers' Memorial Day will come without hardly even a mention. And we kill more than that in America's workplaces over the same 10-year span. The Vietnam War was 10 years long. Go back and look at the numbers over the last decade and see how many people we've killed. And I guarantee we've killed more people in America's workplace than we've died in active combat operations in Vietnam. So
you got to do
I
better.
like I like your article. Is challenging some hypocrisy. We have to do better. We have to do better. And look, I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the questions. I just know I'm tired of doing fatality investigations and seeing these things just like in this incident. Now, like I said earlier, I don't think this resulted in fatality, but it could have. It could have.
Yeah.
We have a fire, we have an explosion, and get in there, and what do we find out? We don't have basic respiratory protection. We don't have HAZCOM. We have 10 serious violations related to flammable liquid storage and fire extinguisher training and
And we
forklift
knew.
training things.
And we knew.
Somebody knew. Okay. So if they're not a contractor, but if they were a contractor, how do we move beyond the pre-qualification? We got to go see, do these people do what they say they do? And this would have discovered it. An audit would have discovered it. Actually going out, deep diving them, looking beyond their paperwork, which is important. Pre-qualification is important, but that word pre needs to be remember that sentence. It's pre-qualification. It's getting us to the stage, to the point where we can go see, do these people do what they say they do? And if we do that, we'll have safer workplaces. We'll help coach people to identifying hazards, putting controls in place. But I liked your article. I thought it was cool. And evidently a
Well,
lot of other people did too.
well, thank you, James. So I think we covered that pretty well. I think this is going to be a good episode. Hope you guys liked it. Thank you again to Veriforce for powering us. Every week we drop an episode on Tuesday around noontime. You can hear us both in the new episode and in old episodes. We've got a couple years worth now in the bank. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us Veriforce's YouTube. You can find us on anywhere you find podcasts, Amazon, Apple, Spotify, you name it. Why don't you sign up, subscribe, and get that episode to drop right to your phone so you can listen to it right away every Tuesday at about noontime. So, James, you want to take us out?
Hey, I want to give a shout out to our lovely and talented American treasure, Miss Amanda, who is our producer. She's the one responsible for the new podcast look. If you're on there and you like it, give her a thumbs up, give her a shout out, tell her thank you. I like the way it's coming out. We've come a long ways based on her hard work as a producer and the folks at Veriforce. Look, we have an entire library of episodes talking about topics just like this, bringing on interesting, thought leading guests, recognized safety professionals and experts spanning from academia all the way to folks in the field who are out there every day where the metal meets the meat. Go back, check out some of those episodes. Invite your friends. I'm fond to say your mama wants you to listen to the risk matrix, but she wants your pals to listen to the risk matrix too. We do this for you, right? We do this for you, and we continue to do it because you're supporting the podcast. The best way to continue to support the podcast is hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. That means a lot to us. It helps the algorithms, gets us out into other people's inboxes so they can join the discussion as well. But thank y'all very much. Take time out to remember Workers Memorial Day. Those events are coming up here soon. And until next time, keep bringing workers home safe from high hazard jobs. Roll Tide, baby.